We're here down in London at the Podcast Show 2023. We're going to go inside and learn about all things podcasting. We're going to ask a few people some questions. But before we do that, please make sure to hit that subscribe button. Let's go! So let's ask some people some questions about podcasting. Can you tell me what your favorite podcast is?
Well, I like all sorts, but the one that I listen to every time is The Moon Underwater by John Robbins and Robin Allender. It's inspired by George Orwell's essay of the same name, where he just invents his dream pub and they get comedians and musicians and like the odd kind of beer pro to invent their dream pub.
It would have to be Friends Per Second, it's a gaming podcast, and then related to Acast, I'll say Happy Place. Mm-hmm. They're probably like my favourite ones, yeah.
Dungeons and Daddies.
Please explain more.
Dungeons and Daddies is a D&D podcast, and it's a load of video game creators that have done like a D&D universe, and it's just really, really funny. It's about a load of dads who lose their kids. And I'm a massive nerd, so I quite like it. And I do a lot of driving around the country as well, and the episodes are quite long, and it's quite funny and kind of meditative, so I just stick it on and forget about the fact that I'm in a car. Obviously, I do remember that I'm in a car and I drive it correctly.
It's Private Parts by Jamie Lang. It's like a chat show. He has different guests on and they just chat shit, basically.
Yes, I have quite a few, but at the moment I'm really loving Aware and Aggravated by Leo Skeppy. But he does a lot of like positive self-talk and yeah, like how to be a better person content. But I love it because it's that kind of stuff that would make you roll your eyes, but he does it in such like a brutal way. So he says he's like the tough friend that everybody should have. So he just like talks to you so mean. And I don't know why, but I'm like, this is what I needed.
So do you have a podcast yourself?
I don't know. I've got a lot of friends that want to get into it, so that's always interesting. I think it's one of the coolest formats right now. Everyone's really trying to dip their toes into it, you know, and learn a little bit more about it as well. It's really, really cool.
Yes, I produce a couple of shows. So I'm going to name two, otherwise I just would feel like a really bad podcast producer mom. And one of them is called Climate Curious, and that comes from TEDx London. And it's the climate show for people who are bored, scared, or confused by climate. And the other show I produce is Crazy Smart Asia by Tatler Asia, and that's basically all about unexpected stories of Asia's disruptors. Quite a business focus on it, quite like a social impact, innovation, sustainability focus. So if you're interested in business but don't know a lot about like Asia's leaders in business, then that's the show for you.
Amazing.
No, I don't have a voice of podcasting. I've been featured on some podcasts, once I had a email read out by Danny Baker and Gary Lineker, so that was pretty cool.
Do you have a podcast yourself?
Yes, we do. As you can see, we've got a multi-revenue podcast. We're looking to do a deal, sponsorship or a platform deal. So let's make it happen. I can't actually say what it is yet because, we'll give away the secrets.
If you can pitch to me a podcast idea right now, what is it going to be?
All right, so it's called Boomer Bends, and it's two guitar players that aren't quite boomers but aren't quite Gen Z either, trying to talk about cool stuff, but all that they do is keep like doing yeah, that's my life.
That sounds like me and you, to be honest. Cool.
Man, I've got loads of random ideas. I can't pitch it. This is how I can't pitch it. I can't think of
anything at all.
I'm passionate about trainers. That's me, king of trainers. So maybe a podcast about trainers.
Sweet.
Okay, maybe a bunch of lads gaming together, and it's called Settle the Score. If they fall out, they have to have a game of FIFA or play some Tekken. I don't know.
That's something I'd watch. Yeah.
Sadly, it'd probably be a really boring football one. That's probably what I know best. I don't know, does anyone do any football podcasts? I haven't seen many out there.
What would be your spin on it?
Or maybe I would focus on a particular era of football, maybe something like the 80s. That's kind of when I got into football. It was a much different game from how it is now. So maybe a focus on an 80s podcast.
It's called Climate Crimes ASMR. And it's going to be an ASMR podcast all about, climate crimes, climate criminals.
Okay, so I used to work for like an events-based hostel, and we always said we should have a podcast where everyone just like that comes to the hostel tells like their craziest stories from like their times traveling and being there.
That sounds really good. Yeah, I listen to that. What's one thing that you've learned today at the podcast show?
Brands need to look into the podcasts that they're advertising on, and they need to be regulated because otherwise can get a little bit complicated.
Okay, so what I've just come. I've learned that when you dress up like a king in gold, a lot of people just come up to you and you don't have to say anything. Yeah. So I've learned you got to stand out, you got to be unique, you got to have good subject matter, and you just got to be, not afraid to try new things.
One thing that I sort of already had a hunch, but it was good to hear reinforced by a sound designer and composer and poet whose work I really like, a guy called Axel Cocoutier. He was just saying, don't get hung up on the software. All DAWs are exactly the same. They all do exactly the same thing, just with different keyboard shortcuts.
Yeah, you can get so caught up in sound. Like, just don't worry about it. Just press record and go.
I think it's really important to find your niche, not just try and do a podcast that's about everything. It has to be really authentic. Be linked to your passion or your interest, just so you come across, believable, pretty much. I think that's a really good lesson there.
Just how diverse an audience it is, really.
That the podcast market is only getting bigger. There are lots of new creators here. There are lots of people with really good ideas. And the big subject here at the podcast show is how do we do collaborations? Where does the money come from? How do we, really get the podcast off the ground in terms of co-branding and stuff like that? And I think that this particular market is in a really exciting place where the next 5 years gets defined in the next 5 months. And it's just going to grow and get bigger and better, and there's going to be lots of really cool content and really new and exciting ways to consume it as well.
So being a producer, what is one thing that makes a podcast good?
A very singular point of view, a very well-defined mission with clear outtakes and objectives for the listener. So I'm not looking for another big show with the same old guests talking about the same old things. I want unique content on a specific topic in a way that's going to either entertain me, inform me, and really give me value as a listener, because I think there's a lot of commercialization of the industry, which is really good. But I think with that, there's quite a lot of disrespect of the listener. So yeah, put the listener first.
So we've interviewed a few people and got their thoughts and feelings on podcasts, but now we're going to go around the booths and talk to the industry specialists so we can really find out what podcasting is all about. Let's go! So I'm here on the Shure stand, and Jack next to me is going to tell me why audio quality is so important for your podcast. Jack?
Well, it's an audio medium, isn't it? So it has to be good because that is the only way that you've got to convey your message. And if you have good audio, it's going to be less exhausting for the listener to listen to for a longer period of time. So you want to make sure that you have a low dynamic range. There's not too much loud, not too much quiet. It has to be of a good fidelity. However, I would still say it's not the most important part of your podcast. The most important part of your podcast is the content itself. So you want to make sure that you're putting time and effort into getting the content right, the delivery right, and that means choosing a product that makes the audio side good enough as easy as possible. Lots of podcasts kind of sell themselves on a really good sound, but I believe that the audio needs to be good enough, and the standard is quite high, but there are products in the market that get you to that good enough point without having to have a super expensive setup, without having to spend hours inside a compressor and hours inside an EQ, gets you there pretty much automatically, and then you've got time as a creator to spend on writing your podcast, marketing your podcast, finding out what you want to talk about, all that sort of stuff. And I think that's the most important bit.
What is one tip that you can give to the budding podcasters out there today?
Keep making podcasts. Don't make one and just be like, cool, that's it, I'm gonna live for a while. Just keep making content. The more that you make, the better that you're gonna get. Experiment with stuff. But if people aren't coming to you saying oh, the sound is really bad, then don't feel like you've got to change anything. Just keep making stuff. The more you do it, the better that you get.
Awesome, thank you so much. So we're here with Edit Audio. Could you please tell us what you can do for podcasters?
We can do absolutely anything from just editing your audio files to doing the full, from start to finish, post-production, research, guest booking, all the way to the final, getting it out there, getting it promoted, and getting listeners to find it.
And can you help anyone from the smallest podcasters all the way up to the biggest?
Yeah, so something that we really like to do is work with people that really align with our values, because we're a mission-driven company. So we like to have conversations early on about what it is that's needed, and if it's something that we feel like really aligns with us and what the content that we want to be putting out in the world, it all starts with a conversation, and we're more than happy to hear from people and have those conversations to figure out is exactly how we can help people.
So what's one tip that you've got for podcasters that can help them?
I would say don't be afraid of putting yourself out there. You've got to reach out. You've got to be on social media. Nobody's going to find you unless they're telling them where you can be found. And I find that, anything is better than nothing. You might think, I'm only getting one like and it's my auntie and she's, but the more that you do it, all it takes is one person to share it and then you suddenly find your audience. So really get out there, do your research, find out what other shows there are like you, and don't be afraid to ask other podcasts, do you want to do a guest swap? Do you want to do a feed swap? And just make friends, network, get looking on LinkedIn, get looking on Twitter, and find as many like-minded people as you can.
Amazing, thank you so much. So I'm here with Alex from Focusrite, and he's going to tell us why the Vocaster is an incredibly good interface for podcasters and why you should also acoustically treat your room.
That's right, yeah. So we're here at the podcast show. A little bit about the Vocaster. It's a really easy to use audio interface. So it's just something you plug your microphone into, connect it to your computer, get really good recording. And you got your headphones, you stick them on as well. They're kind of, the big benefit for podcasters is it's just really easy to use, and there's like enhancement on board, automatically set your levels and stuff. So you can just put it to one side and focus on getting a really good conversation or a commentary. It's really good for podcasts, also really good for streaming as well. So you can like loop in audio from your phone or from a YouTube video and get that into the conversation as well. So ideally, kind of just put it to one side and don't have to worry about setting it up and getting all technically bogged down in the details.
Awesome. So there's also this amazing, huge booth. Can you tell us a little bit about it? And as a podcaster, why should I have an acoustically treated room?
Well, so this is the Studio Bricks 1 XXL, and it is silent in there. And a day like today is perfect just because there's a lot of ambience in this room, and you just get a time out in there. It's really nice, but it's really good for obviously if you're recording, cutting out any background sound from anyway. I mean, you could put this anywhere, and you're going to get a dead silent environment. Yeah, it's really, really important because your listener doesn't want to deal with a lot of background noise, sort of rumble, that kind of stuff.
So let's just quickly jump in, and you can see the difference of how it sounds from out here and in there. Let's go. So yeah, we're inside the room now, and as soon as that door closed, it was just like and now you can probably hear that actually now I'm probably really loud, and if you just be silent for a second, it's perfectly dead. So that is perfect for your podcast. So Alex, thank you so much for joining us today.
That's all right, thank you.
So we're here with Fresh Air. They're really important for podcasters, but can you please tell us why?
Yeah, so we are the UK's leading producer of podcasts for brands. So we come out of a background of having made shows for the BBC, and I'm an X5 Live producer, and we all have some sort of broadcast background. But our strategy and what we do these days is all about making podcasts for brands who commission us to make content in audio.
So what is one thing that you would let all the budding podcasters out there know that they should know when they're getting into podcasting?
So the important thing for us is all about knowing what success looks like. So when lots of people want to get brands on side and want brands to help monetize the podcast. But if you don't start with a really clear idea of who your listener is, then you are kind of hamstrung from the start, because everything flows from that. Everything in terms of the marketing, the presenter choice, the format, all of that stuff comes from just knowing A, who your listener is, B, what you want to say to them, C, what you want them to do differently as a result of hearing your podcast, and then how you're going to market that. So, we are obviously producing quite high-level stuff for brands, but for amateur podcasters, it's all the same. It's all about just understanding your audience and then planning it from there.
So there you go. That was the podcast show 2023. There's a couple of things to take away from this. Number one, think about your content. Create something that you can talk passionately about. Number two, don't think about your gear too much. You don't need the most expensive gear in the world as long as it works for you. And number three, just get out there and start creating podcasts. So if you have a podcast, let us know down in the comments and make sure you like and subscribe. And we'll see you later. Bye.